Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's now time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin in the UK, where polls have opened as the country votes for its next government. Earlier, Prime Minister Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn concluded their campaigning less than 4 miles away from each other on the eve of polls opening. Both the Prime Minister and the Labour leader chose East London venues for final rallies. Polling stations will stay open until 10 p.m. local time. At that point, the long-awaited exit poll will be released. So it's this day, D-Day, finally.
Decision day.
Yes, and it's been a long time coming. It's been an interesting run-up to the elections. Some familiar faces, if you're comparing it with 2017, which was the last general election. You have Jeremy Corbyn remaining as Labour leader. Lib Dems have changed to Joe Swinson. You have Boris Johnson now heading the Tories, and it all remains to be seen. It's up to the people now.
Well, I think we should keep our fingers crossed. By evening, we'll begin to get the exit polls, and by tomorrow morning, we should know where the future of the United Kingdom is going. At the moment, the future of the United Kingdom is down to the wire, as one newspaper headlined yesterday.
Absolutely. It's down to the people now. It's a great day for everyone, and it's good to see that a lot of people are also speaking about coming out to vote. And there's a lot of momentum around coming out to vote, so hopefully things are going to go well.
That's always a good thing. Now, the Nigerian government on Wednesday begged Nigerians to be patient over the dilapidated road network in the country. Speaking to the executive and trustee members of the Public Transport Owners of Nigeria Association, PTONA, in Abuja, Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Raji Fashola, called on Nigerians to be patient and show understanding on the conditions of the road, as a lot is being done to ease the pain Nigerians go through while plying them. The minister also expressed his readiness to work closely with all stakeholders, saying, in quotes, "We are stakeholders, we need to work together. If it works for you, it works for us." End of quote. Pardon my amusement, but this is a marked departure from his initial stance, which was that all was well with the Nigerian road networks. And we can see pictures like we just showed now. That is far from the truth. So I'm glad he's now acknowledging that there is a problem, because without acknowledging a problem, you have no hope of solving it.
Well, let's just say that the other time when Minister of Works, Fashola, was quoted as saying that Nigerian roads are not bad at all or whatever, he denied that he didn't say so, that it was, the newspapers that quoted him out of context. But it's good that he's saying that, look, Nigerians should be patient, that government is doing a lot to fix bad roads, dilapidated roads, and he makes the point that the federal government has been meeting with, contractors and other stakeholders, and that, although there is a gap between approval and then the actual commencement of a construction or rehabilitation, is reassuring every Nigerian that in due course, there will be a difference in terms of the roads. And the roads are very important, just like other infrastructure, because, bad roads endanger the lives of Nigerians. And many Nigerians, as the president of the leader of the delegation of the public transport owners pointed out, at the moment, in terms of perception, Nigerians, according to him, have a very negative perception of government's commitment, either to the provision of infrastructure or the fixing of the bad roads all over the country. And really, he's correct in that regard. This Christmas, I imagine that many people will not even, venture to travel to different parts of the country because of bad roads. A normal journey that would take you 30 minutes, you could spend like 5 hours, 6 hours, and look at the implications in terms of, personal health and also for the economy and the cost of everything.
Absolutely, because I don't think, and public opinion suggests that the roads have not been in this bad a state ever. And there's nowhere that you can go now where you're not going to get stuck in bad roads. So at the end of the day, it's good that the minister is coming out to say this, because everyone was aggrieved when that initial statement, whether it was his complete wording or not, came out saying that, because it was so insensitive to the Nigerian people and what we're going through on these roads. Something has to be done. Something has to be done quick. But the most important thing is they also need to understand that we also want to see that progress. We don't just want to hear about that progress. We also want to see it. And that is why that statement came out about Nigerians not having that much faith in the public interest of our leaders, because we never see the progress as it happens. So that needs to be ensured.
Let us add a footnote, though. You will recall that when Minister Fashola was said to have made that statement that generated public outrage, the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmad, pointed out that, look, these routes are not all owned or maintained, by the federal government of Nigeria. That states also have a responsibility. And this is probably an opportunity for us to say that state governments also need to play their own part, because you go to some state capitals, you go to some towns and cities, you'll find that many of these state governors are not doing enough, to maintain the roads. Sometimes you just meet, gaping potholes on the roads, and they're there, destroying people's vehicles, causing accidents, So all of this is important. And then, of course, this is Yuletide period. I hope that the federal government and the states will take along, maintenance or rehabilitation of the roads. They will take along with it, providing security. Our highways are not safe. Arterial roads have become major spots for armed robbers and kidnappers, just waiting to ambush people and kidnap them or attack them. The roads add to that. They make it possible.
Indeed, they absolutely do. Well, it's just good to see some responsiveness from the government. Yeah. Speaking of which, the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, AGF, Abubakar Malami, says the federal government has ordered an investigation into Friday's invasion of the Federal High Court in Abuja by operatives of the Department of State Services, DSS. Malami stated this during a visit to the Federal High Court on Wednesday. When asked if he was not appalled by DSS's conduct, Malami said, in quote, "Whatever affects the integrity of the court is a worrisome issue for us. I can never be preemptive of an incident over which I was not a live witness to. But one thing I'm certain of is that the government has put in place mechanisms for investigation of the reported incidents. So I would like to be preemptive in terms of a conclusion one way or another without allowing the consummation and conclusion of the investigation process." End quote. Malami also stressed that he did not visit the chief judge over Mr. Omoyele Showore's case, but to congratulate him on his confirmation by the Senate as substantive chief judge of the Federal High Court. So, yes, it's good that the Attorney General, rather than being defensive and saying the DSS has spoken, that's it, is open to an investigation and will comment at the conclusion of said investigation. So that is also sort of leaning to public opinion. The fact that there's just so much outrage, it wouldn't be in order for him to dismiss it or attempt to sweep it under the carpet. So this is a good tone that he struck there.
Well, yes, while it sounds like a good tone, I think the problem is that he's speaking rather late. This is coming too late. At the time the incident occurred, it would have been nice if the same day, the Attorney General had come forward to say, oh, this doesn't look nice. It's worrisome, as he has now said, and that the federal government is going to investigate and get to the root of whatever happened.
Are you not expecting too much?
That would have been very prompt. It would have been very timely.
Are you not expecting too much from somebody who said national interest overrides the rule of law? Well,
I mean, he could have spoken earlier, because if he had done that, maybe the level of outrage, both local and international, would have been moderated. There was also something that he said, which the newspapers reported. He was telling the journalists who posed questions to him that we have established a tradition of respect for the rule of law. And we have also established a tradition of respect for the independence of the judiciary. Oh, really? I'm putting in verbatim. Now, when I read that, I just laughed. I was wondering whether many Nigerians would believe him. But in any case, it's good to say those words, but it's not enough to say those words. What is more important is to demonstrate, those words in terms of real action by government. Now, the other thing, again, is that on this issue, there have been discordant tunes, from the federal government of Nigeria. Here is the Attorney General and Minister of Justice saying the matter is being investigated and that there is respect for the rule of law. On the other hand, you had presidential spokesman Femi Adesina on Channels Television yesterday saying that the UK, the EU, the US or other bodies or foreign countries are condemning the rearrest of Showore and the invasion of the court by secret police should mind their business. That Nigeria is not answerable to the international community. We're a sovereign nation. I mean, what kind of talk is that?
Terrible.
We're part of the international community, and we're duty bound to respect standards, of democracy, values and principles of democracy. Sometimes it probably helps to keep quiet. And I think that, the Attorney General saying one thing and the presidential spokesman saying another thing.
And the DSS saying yet another thing.
So it doesn't quite look neat.
Absolutely.
So there must be better coordination in terms of response to serious issues like this that engage the attention of both local and international stakeholders.
It doesn't look neat because this has to be one of the messiest situations we have ever seen. And it's just so unfortunate. In my opinion, it looks like the only reason the Attorney General even came out to say anything was because of international pressure that has been amounting. But that's like the furthest step this government seems like they're going to take. They're not going to respond to the international pressure by doing the right thing. Instead, what they're going to do is put their spokesperson in front of national television to come and say that the international community should mind their business. Absolutely not. That's not how the world works.
And those countries have their own problems. They should go and deal with their problems.
We belong to an international community. Come on.
At this note, we'll take a short break. We'll be back with more news headlines. Stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still on the news headlines. The National Union of Electricity Employees has suspended its strike embarked upon on Wednesday to draw the Nigerian government's attention to the plight of its members. Following a meeting with officials of the federal government, the union accepted to discontinue the one-day-old strike. According to the national president of the NUEE, Comrade Joe Ajero, who confirmed the outcome of the meeting to our sister outfit this day, the workers' grievances were conclusively addressed at the talks, which lasted till the wee hours of Thursday today. So we can all breathe a sigh of relief for now, at least. And it just goes to show that all this union really wanted was dialogue. So I fail to see why that could not have happened within the 21-day window of the ultimatum. But anyway, all's well that ends well. We do hope that this is the end and their grievances are addressed. Well,
I mean, yesterday there was general blackout in parts of the country.
Yes.
And the excuse that had been given by the discos, Eko Disco, Ibadan Disco, Kaduna Disco, is that this is due to, one, the collapse of the national grid, and then two, the industrial action by the National Union of Electricity Employees. But now one of the problems has been solved. The electricity employees, through Comrade Joe Ajero, have called off the strike. But at the same time, the discos will still need to do whatever they need to do to make sure that the national grid is fixed, because this is about the 10th time there will be collapse of national grid this year alone, causing so much discomfort for everybody. And then let us also know that why it's a good development that the electricity employees have called off their strike. Comrade Ajero gave a note of caution that yes, certain agreements were reached, and they're going to watch whether or not those agreements will be implemented. If government fails in that regard, then of course they will have no option to go back again, on strike. And I hope that will not happen, because what we have seen is that the current Minister of Power tends to just slip over matters and waste plenty of time. I hope he will realize the urgency of this and the implications.
It's just really sad because it's as though too many people in public offices don't understand the importance of their duty and the importance of the office that they serve. You had a notice come in and you had 21 days. And it's so clear, like you said, Tundun, that all they wanted was dialogue. You were literally going to allow the nation to get plunged into darkness because you didn't care, because it doesn't affect you. But there are 200 million citizens in this country, and some way, somehow, you have to ensure that there's a system working. And if that system is broken, people are going to speak up. And if you're ignoring people speaking up, then I'm sorry, but you're not leading the people. You should not be running that ministry. It's unfortunate. So the government better make sure they do everything to ensure that this does not happen, and they do start to continue with dialogue to ensure that everything runs smoothly. We can't afford it. It's the power sector. Absolutely,
Leila. Now we have Aaron Akerejada joining us now to talk about sports. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning, ladies. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning.
And just want to say, let me give a heads up for the first story for the ladies. And I tell you that one man, Joe Barton, has risked the wrath of senior figures from women's football after claiming that their product will always be inferior unless serious changes are made to the game. The former Manchester City and Newcastle midfielder, who is now a manager of League One, Fleetwood, believes that the women's game should be introduced with smaller balls, pitches, and goals to improve the quality of football on show. Chelsea women's manager Emma Hayes controversially suggested that the size of the goals should be reduced earlier this year to help make up for the physical difference between men and women. Speaking to Podcast Football, Feminism, and Everything in Between, Barton said it's a different sport, though really, in essence, women's football should be adjusted for women, physiologically and biologically. And some people are, of course, certain women footballers and administrators are already going after him and saying this has sexism written all over it. But I kind of agree with him. I see where they're coming from. Football, if it should be a spectator sport and it should garner the same number that we get to see with the men, radical changes will need to be made. Of course, at the moment, it's not a level playing field. For now, based on the size, based on the general look and feel of the men's game taken to the women's game, I think it's almost a mismatch. For example, in Australia, the Women's Big Bash, which has been garnering quite a lot of crowd, like the male cricket in Australia, has lighter bats, lighter balls for the women, and the result has just been splendid.
Well, when Emma Hayes made a similar statement earlier in the year, there was also a lot of criticism. Yeah. And this was about sexism at one level, and with Joe Barton saying men are faster, men are stronger, men are more physically fit. I mean, there is a sexist tone,
Yes.
Some form of discrimination, and if one of the major concerns globally is to check discrimination in sports, then, of course, Joe Barton's statement will be classified, as a form of discrimination against women. You also recall that, in football, women's soccer, there's also the question of equality with Megan Rapinoe and, the other members of the U.S. World Cup team, female World Cup team.
Yes.
Insisting that, look, there should be equality. They were talking about pay, but equality in every sense. Joey Barton is saying that, if the size of the football is reduced,
smaller,
nobody will notice that the football, in male football is size 5,
yes.
and that of women should be reduced to size 4. But what I feel concerned about is that the female footballers themselves, I've not had any one of them, complaining that they have difficulties, either with the size of the ball or with the size of the goalpost.
So for me, it's generally blamed on the media that the huge disparity occurs because the media makes role models and heroes and titans of the male footballers, and the female footballers just are like a footnote. So there's that. But with regards to the physical differences, for me, equal does not mean uniform. It's completely different. Yes. So if you do have physical differences and what have you, as you raised the point, if the players themselves demand a change, then that can be considered. But if the players are not complaining, I don't see the issue.
It's almost, they're almost left at the mercy of the administrators, because if the players speak out, will their voices be heard? Do they even know that they have the opportunity?
Their voices will be heard because look at Megan Rapinoe.
Do they know that
they know?
They
know. Trust me, they know.
The US women's football team, for example, they do know that their voices are there. I think it's a double-edged sword. I can understand someone coming out to say that, okay, logically, if we're going to look at the general idea that women are less physically able or less physically strong as men, then we can take that and say, okay, but to be honest with you, that's not necessarily the case in the world that we live in.
It's not.
Because anyone can be stronger, faster than another person, and it's not necessarily as relative as the concept that's coming out. What I'm going to say, though, is that take netball, for example, which is a predominantly female sport, right? A netball is smaller than a basketball. And a netball court is smaller than a basketball court. Now, I hate the comparison of netball to basketball, but if you see women's basketball being played and you see women's netball being played, I'm sorry, there's no difference in the speed of the match.
No, but
there's no difference in
look at it. This lady, for example.
Raise a poser.
Okay.
I know you are on the side of Joey Barton.
Yes.
But sometimes when I watch some of those female football teams, I just have the impression that, look, if these ladies were to meet a male football team, they will beat them.
Yes.
That's
the U.S. national team,
the level of
the Swedish,
the level of aggression and ferocity that the men bring to the game would almost make it physically impossible and make it a massive mismatch.
I disagree in the specific context of football. If we were talking sprint, for example, then I would agree because men are faster than women if you're talking about marathons
but these are all the things that actually translate into
not necessarily,
football.
not necessarily, but there's also the skill. It's almost like saying you need to market a specific kind of car for women drivers. Let's modify the car because women are driving. In some contexts, it's completely ridiculous. In some contexts, it makes sense. So for me, in football, it doesn't make any sense because the female football players are not demanding this.
Aaron, do you know what I would compare it to? Imagine if you take like 100 meters track and you say, because women are not as fast as men, we're going to change the women's race to a 50 or 70 meters track race and men are going to do 100 meters. No, you keep it at 100 track and then you calculate the speeds. The speeds are different. Everyone knows it's different.
Okay,
you don't change the track.
In the context of 90 minutes. As the case may be now,
but they're
for
playing
the women.
90 minutes
now.
happily.
No, but the level of intensity in a man in a men's football is quite different from the level of intensity.
You are complaining.
Yeah. I'm not complaining. I love watching women's football, but you get more excited about a male football game as against a female football game.
So that's Dr. Abbas's point about sexism and the insidious ways in which it rears its head. What they want is an equal playing field with regards to media attention.
Exactly.
That is the complaint that has been made. So they do have voices and they do use them. So their voice has been used in that, to channel that and to talk about the pay gap, but never to do with, we need smaller balls, please. No.
Exactly. So if the women are not up here...
Anyway, it's very obvious that you are not going to change our opinions.
No, certainly. I'm actually not so. And that's why I actually apologized before we did the story, because I knew I was going to lose the battle even before going into the ring. But let's actually move it away from that, and let's tell you that violent clashes erupted in the center of Paris, Mad, the build-up to the Wednesday's night UEFA Champions League clash between Paris Saint-Germain and Galatasaray. Chairs were thrown and tear gas were used to disperse the two sets of supporters at around 6 p.m. in the evening. It is estimated that by French media that 100 fans dressed mostly in black jackets and balaclavas were involved in the incident. One person is reported to have suffered a head injury, according to the Le Parisien. Videos were posted on social media throughout the afternoon and evening. One shows chairs being chucked around, while another shows appears to be a flare thrown in the busy square of people. A third video showed a group clad in all black rushing down the side street with chairs and weapons in their hands, and a fourth video emerged later in the evening showing a naked Paris Saint-Germain fan who had been attacked and forced to strip by Galatasaray fans after reportedly burning a Turkish flag.
Ugly scenes there.
Really sad scenes, I must say.
This thing is about these fans, who are very, violent.
They are called ultras in football.
Yes, it happens either it's racism or violence, and it has a long history. But in this particular case, there was even a fight before the match started. And then the PSG, made things worse by demolishing the Galatasaray team 5-0.
On the pitch.
With Mbappe and Neymar, all over the place, scoring and also setting up 3 more goals. And I think that annoyed the fans.
Even more. But this was even before the game. This was before the game.
Yes.
And usually this is why when massive games like this are happening, they always call on extra police force to reinforce this, is because fans will be there drinking and getting excited, and once someone might just say something that might rub off to another person the wrong way, and the person just takes out his grievance. For someone in Paris, a French person to be stripped naked because he went as far as
Turkish
flag.
Wow.
Why should he even do
Thank
that?
you.
Thank you,
Really
Aaron.
sad.
Hooliganism and football is synonymous now,
Honestly.
unfortunately.